So, welcome to it, y'all. As I said, this is Halloween themed. It does include a lot of images of some of our favorite horror movies. So, this may be a bit graphic for some viewers. So, viewer discretion is advised. With that being said, oh yes, there will be blood. What's your favorite scary movie, Kathy?
I think Jaws. And I know that's not like a classic scary movie.
Oh, it's classic scary, absolutely.
Is my favorite, closely followed by The Exorcist, I think.
I love Jaws. I'm not gonna lie, I do. I love Jaws. My favorite, it depends on the day, right?
Right.
But my favorite series is obviously Friday the 13th, which, I mean, you'd have to look around my office to get that, but this mask right here is hand painted. Right there. Yeah. And I have several favorite horror movies. It just depends on my mood and the time of year. So
yeah, I watch Jaws every summer. Scream is. I think I like the Scream. The Scream series probably is
absolutely
one of my favorites.
Fantastic. It's one of the best series out there as far as slashers are concerned. So
yeah,
let's get to who we are real quick. How about it?
Alrighty.
Well, okay, you control the deck. I won't. I'm going to leave my hands off the keyboard.
All right, cool.
I'll make sure that the chainsaw over here is
staying
idle and everything. My name is Aaron Moss. I am a senior security consultant for Secure Ideas. I am based in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I've been a professional hacker since 2017. Spent a lot of time on the help desk and doing other IT stuff before that. I've been a consultant for many years now, as far as being a consultant in security and in IT. A little bit about me. I am a deconstructed Christian, which basically means that everything that I learned growing up, as far as the faith that I'm in, I questioned it, and I think I've come out stronger on the other side. If you want to talk more about that, hit me up at hotdoggity, or just email me at aaron.boss@securideas.com. Clearly, I'm a horror movie geek. I'm not going to show you the rest of my office right now because it is a real disaster. But I also like to make masks and stuff like that, which is what all that over there is. So that's a lot of fun stuff for me and everything. Also, just real quick, I'm one of the B-Sides Oklahoma founders and co-organizers, co-slackers at this point, I guess, if you will, right? Kathy?
Yep. So my name is Kathy Collins. I'm based in Jacksonville, Florida, which is where Secure Ideas home office is. I've been in InfoSec since 2020. Prior to that, I was a chef. During COVID, I was laid off, went back to school, and was lucky enough to get on with Secure Ideas shortly after I graduated and got a few boring certifications. And by boring certifications, I just mean Sec Plus and those type, none of the OSCP or the fun hackery ones that everybody wants to get. But I have worked the help desk too, like Aaron said. But for some companies like you may have heard of something called America Online that used to be around.
What's America Online?
AOL. Never heard of them?
I heard something about them a few times with some kind of movies or merger with Warner Brothers or something at one point. I don't know. It sounds familiar.
Are you messing with me?
I know. They want to get all of those really cool coasters, right?
Coasters? Yeah, the coasters that they used to send in the mail. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I used to get a ton of those.
Yeah, they send them in the mail. And then you go to log on and it would say, you've got goodbye. Yeah, you got a lot of that.
I'm not going to get into what I had a friend of mine that had AOL whenever I was a kid, and he had the custom themes and stuff like that for it, and one of them said, you've got mail. So,
yeah, there were all kinds of good ones, and that was there was a lot of those type of words on the calls as well.
Right.
But I'm a Chicago native. I've been in Jacksonville, Florida for almost 20 years now. I am a child mom, a dog mom, and a lady wife. My wife and I got married last month in Las Vegas, actually. This is this picture makes me laugh because this is my daughter with the red hair 2 years ago on her first day of 5th grade. And she's so sweet and cute and she loves me. And then the picture next to that is how she looks at me pretty much all the time now. So
yeah,
that's
she even looks at me like that whenever I'm around too. And I'm like, what are you doing?
Yep.
Like, I love her to death, but she gives me say, I'm like, what did I do? I'm the cool guy.
Like Aaron, I'm a big horror nerd. Maybe not as much so as him. Like, I love the 70s to 90s movies. Like I've seen a lot of the new stuff, but like Aaron's into like who directed it and all this stuff. And sometimes I'm just like, this is a good movie.
I've read books on it. I've have books sitting here on the stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, so he's a little deeper into it than I am, but you can't see much. I think you can see my Kiss dolls back there. Not really horror, but I've got a bunch of other stuff that you can't see. Also, keyboards. I love keyboards and have built mechanical keyboards and end up, swapping out keyboards all the time. I've probably got about 20 of them hanging around my room that you can't quite see right now either. But let's see. Yeah, that's not going to work out. But I'm also a coordinator for B-Sides Jacksonville, which just came back this year. It was on hiatus for a few years because of COVID and a few other things, but we just had our 2023 one last weekend, and it went really well. Biggest one in history. So that's me. Moving on. What are we going to talk about today?
Sorry, before we move on, I just wanted to throw a big shout out to Dano Bennett and Steve Anderson, who are here with us right now. They're good friends of mine from a long time ago, if you will. So,
I see a couple other people that we know.
A couple of things in here into the. There's some references in here a little bit later that were meant specifically for a specific group, and those are two of them. So I'm excited to see them here.
A specific group. Huh? All right, I see a Josh Kemp and a Sweeney in here too. I think I know who those bearded guys are. All right, so.
You going to talk about this? You want me to talk about it?
Yeah, we could both talk about it.
All right. So you guys probably know last month, MGM Resorts, not MGM the movie, whatever, although obviously they're pretty much one and the same, right? They got hacked, and they got hacked hard using some social engineering tactics, primarily some phishing phone calls to the help desk, which we're going to go over here in a little bit. That was pretty nasty, actually, because once they got in, they caused a hell of a stir. September 2021, Beetleye was breached through a misconfigured S3 buckets. We're going to cover that. It's going to be a pretty big deal. And then, do you want to talk about this one, the security researcher?
Yeah, the slick wraps. Yes, there was a security researcher that found a directory traversal. Was able to upload files. I guess if you could, well, we could talk about it more in depth later, but basically he found a vulnerability, exploited it, and then proceeded to write what he called penetration test about it and publish it online. Yeah.
I'll find it online. As a matter of fact, I can actually probably post the link here in a little bit in the chat once we get to that. It's really interesting because it does look like a report to a degree, more like the narrative, but it's very, very. I don't want to say accurate. I mean, if it wasn't done by this guy, then somebody really has an imagination. That's all I'm going to say. Moving on.
MGM, A Nightmare on Las Vegas Boulevard. Dun, dun, dun. I think everybody's probably seen something about this in the news recently. This one is interesting to me because I was actually there. I mentioned that I got married in Las Vegas last month. And we were there and checking out of an MGM property the day after this happened. Like, we didn't know it had happened. It was weird, though. It was the Sunday, whatever that date was. It was like the 9th or 10th. And we checked out, and they didn't charge my credit card right away. And I thought that was weird. Like, I looked later, and I was like, whatever, it'll be there tomorrow. Monday, I looked at it, still not there. Tuesday, they hadn't charged it, and I was like, what's going on? And then I saw the breach. It had been announced. Everybody was talking about it. Lots of stuff was down. We were on Fremont Street by then for the last 2 days, so we weren't in the middle of it. But I mean, it was bad news for them. The casino, they couldn't check people in properly. People couldn't use their rewards points. The slot machines were down, had the blue screen of death going on. Hotel room keys, they leaked all kinds of stuff like that. And there's some of the details are still coming out about this.
Right.
And we're going to get a little bit more into it, but.
Right. So next slide. So basically the thing is the initial access, as we talked about, right, was what we can tell through reports has been from a phishing attack against the help desk. Now, the other thing that what we can tell is from all the reports specifically about Scattered Spider, the group that has been alleged behind this, they're very knowledgeable in social engineering attacks. And this is a primary MO for them to attack different organizations in this manner. So not only they're very knowledgeable, but some people have even called them experts at it, gaining access to different organizations, like I said, through vishing and smishing and phishing techniques, all sorts of other techniques as far as social engineering. Clearly, I don't know that there's any physical access happening, but whenever you get this kind of access, you probably don't need it. So how did they accomplish this? Well, first and foremost, they made a phone call to the help desk. The big thing is a former MGM employee that's familiar with the cybersecurity policies around the help desk and stuff like that basically said that all you really needed as far as being able to gain access to somebody's information was essentially basic information about themselves, the name, employee identification number, and date of birth, right? Here's the thing about that. The hardest thing to come across at that point would probably be the employee ID. The thing about that is if you've got your pictures of your badge or anything like that posted online, what are we going to do? We look, whenever we're performing these kinds of attacks ourselves, we're looking at all this different information online that we could possibly find. If we find any kind of badge information that has employee ID numbers or anything else on it, we're going to use that in an attack.
Yeah, that comes up quite a bit.
I'm trying to hand this over to you, Kathy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. What else do we know about them?
Well, okay. So basically, according to some other reports that we've read, a lot of the attacks are against casinos like this are basically because high-profile targets actually frequent these locations, right? Mm-hmm. So you're talking like people with, of course, high rollers and stuff like that are staying at the casino. So you're looking at high-profile people who are basically maybe a target and they're using the casino as a way to get to them. There could be other reasons, but that really we don't know the why outside of somebody was really upset at MGM, according to a Reddit post that I read that had a quote unquote announcement from the alleged attackers, right? Mm-hmm. They basically had said that more than anything, what was it?
It was different attackers. It wasn't Scattered Spider. Wasn't it another outfit that was?
No, that was a different. That was different altogether. That was actually the Slick Raps.
Was it?
It was a different attacker first. We'll discuss that here in a minute.
Okay, yeah.
Where did I pull that up at? Because I had it pulled up a second ago and then I've lost it. So, because where's that Reddit thread? Because it was really interesting what was said. Here it is, the Reddit thread. No, that's not it. Yeah.
I'm going to go to the next.
Here slide. We go. It says, no ransomware was deployed prior to the initial takedown of the infrastructure. They made multiple attempts to reach out to MGM. MGM shut down the computers. Now, this is coming from an Onion, a Tor link, right? That somebody had basically copy pasted over into a Reddit post. So essentially, you're looking at again. I'll actually just post the announcement in the chat. And if you guys want to read over that, you can. I mean, it's publicly available information. I found it just from a Google search, right? Mm-hmm. Basically, it looks like the people who attacked MGM Resorts were pretty much upset that there was some insider trading potentially going on, allegedly going on, with MGM within some of the executives there. And of course, so it looks like a vigilante attack more than anything, right?
Yeah,
So
and they didn't pay anything out. They refused to pay the ransom. That
right.
I don't even think that they demanded a ransom in the beginning.
I don't believe so.
Yeah, I don't think they did. I think it was a few days after MGM knew that they were there and everything that they actually asked for a ransom. I think, like you said, it may have been more vigilante to start with. But
yeah, so the question is, when did they know, right? Mm-hmm. Well, you've got to probably think at this point, MGM being as large as they are, eventually they probably figured it out, whenever the ransomware may have hit. If they didn't know before then that was definitely a sign that they knew at that point, right?
Yeah, sure. And they, this didn't come out until I think Tuesday that week, at least publicly, but everything points back to where this started really happening on Saturday. So how long did they know? What was their communication strategy? I didn't hear anything personally. I heard stuff, in a roundabout way, but like, did MGM contact me or anything? No. And I was staying there during this attack.
Yeah, so, I was going to ask, did they ever contact you about it?
Not at all. Nope. The only indication that we had that anything was wrong, other than me just hearing, through the grapevine that stuff was coming up, was when you log into the MGM Rewards app, like nothing was working. You couldn't look at the hotels. You couldn't look at your points because, you can go swipe that card anywhere on the MGM properties and use it in the casinos or whatever, but nothing was working. So when you log into the app to look at that and get your little free stuff for your points, none of it worked. But it didn't give you any indication that it was a hack or anything like that. It's just like, come back later. Things aren't working right now.
Right. And that's going to be a huge indicator for, especially if the IT people didn't know at the time, or the, executives, whoever else didn't know at the time. I'm sure that people coming up and asking questions like, where's my free play, and other questions along those lines, right, are probably going to pop up and be like, hey, I can't check out of my hotel room. I can't do this. I can't do that. Yeah. And that's probably going to lead them back to, oh, we probably have something wrong if a lot of people are asking this, and it's going to escalate up, right?
Yeah.
So I am curious why nothing ever. I don't know. It seems like they were very.
They still haven't released a lot of details.
Yeah.
And we'll see how that plays out for them, when it comes to like regulations. And there's already been, I think, at least 2 lawsuits, class action lawsuits filed against them, seeking monetary damages. And I thought this part was funny. Assurances that it won't happen again. Like,
right. Yeah.
Okay.
How much do you think the estimated financial losses are?
They're estimating like $100 million.
Wow.
For the what was it? They just now, literally yesterday, I checked, and just now the rewards and everything are back up. Like, you can access that again. And it's
really?
Yeah.
That's over a month later.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably.
And I've been checking. It wasn't like,
yet, right?
What's that?
I said that's probably one of the reasons they're not talking about anything right now, right? Like, because of the simple fact that they still haven't got this contained yet, because they're just bringing stuff back online. They're not going to release any information about any of this probably until after everything's back online, fully locked down, secured to the point that they think that they're probably not going to be breached again. And then, well, let's be honest, if they haven't crossed all their P's and dotted all their Q's, it's probably, this has major potential for happening again.
Yeah. They may not even know the scope of, how it's been exfiltrated or accessed. And
that's a huge problem with a lot of these breaches, right? Because most of the time, I'm sure that everybody here who's been through a breach scenario, you're going to know, hey, there's no way that you're going to have any indication possibly that you've gotten every last little piece of a compromise taken care of. Right. It's the same way. Whenever I talked about working help desk earlier, whenever I worked help desk, not just like phone call help desk, but working with people and computers and stuff like that, just fixing stuff. Anytime that we'd get an infection, I used to try to fix it all the time. But after a while, I realized there's no way that you can actually get everything. And the best way to actually clean up a mess like this is to simply just blow it away and start over from scratch. Now, that's virtually impossible with such a large network like this, especially with their Okta was involved, right? Like
Yeah.
outside of the phishing or the vishing attack, they had to get through Okta. They had to get through multi-factor authentication. So there were controls set up in place that were factory standard. I mean, industry standard for the de facto ways to prevent a breach like this. So there's been speculation that there may have been other ways that they have also accessed past the Okta using like what's called this is a new term for me that I hadn't actually heard before, right? It was called MFA bombing or MFA fatigue, which is essentially it's an attack where you basically get access with a password or something like that, but then you continually send information or send these requests to a client, to a user over and over and over and over and over again, eventually hoping that they will somehow click yes or accept or whatever else on their MFA solution, or somehow put their code in where the attacker can then have access to it, and boom, that's whenever the breach occurred, right? So if they indeed had Okta, which apparently, according to some of the reports, they had access not only to Okta, but they were like global admin as well in Okta. So it's, again, with something like this, having such a huge infrastructure, it's virtually impossible to actually get everything out. So we could see more details about this coming out eventually.
Yeah. And you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
And we'll see if anything happens with, if they didn't release in time or they're not doing things properly, they could get slapped with a lot of fines too. So
right.
We'll see what happens in the future with that. I don't see that happening immediately, but all the information is important.
So where did they fall short, right? Well, again, the MFA fatigue, stuff like that. But also, I think there's a major lack of policy. Let me rephrase this. Because the thing is what we've read is that there are policies in place, but they're really not good policies in place. So even if the policies were in place and they were being followed to a T, the policies don't work, right? Because basically somebody was able to ask for this information, give certain pieces of information, again, date of birth, name, employee ID number. And let's be honest, the employee ID number is really probably what they're going off of at that point. What the policy would really be based around, because that would be the most sensitive piece of information to MGM at this point. Your employee ID number. And if they're randomized or whatever else, it'd be much harder to get access to. But again, if you're posting anything about that online, or you're giving out other information, or you can just guess them. I've been on attacks where I've been able to guess employee IDs, which were the same thing as their usernames, right? I've been able to guess these usernames and other information to gain access to an internal network from the external. So it's not impossible. As a matter of fact, it's probably absolutely probable that there was either some kind of information out there about how the employee IDs were structured, or somebody just got lucky and found one online and decided to go after it. Right?
Or, you and I have both been on, phishing calls where, using a sense of urgency or, authority to intimidate people will or just being like super nice. Like, we've all heard the DEF CON social engineering winner that had the baby crying in the background. And we're trying to we're trying to leave on vacation and my husband, and the baby, wah, wah, and the person on the phone just trying to help,
Yep. That's it right there. I mean, any kind of, and these are all, again, social engineering tactics like this, right, are psychological attacks.
Yeah.
Right. It's manipulation. It's really all it is. It's the reason it's called, it's conning somebody, right? Because you're essentially you're manipulating them to do something for you. And that's why social engineering attacks are so dangerous. But these are why policies in place to not only say, hey, listen, what's your employee ID, this other information, right? You've got to ask other information and potentially verify through a different source that the person you're talking to on the phone is who they say they are. Now, how would that be done? Well, that's outside the scope of this webcast, but I'm sure that if you guys Google it, you could probably find them, right? So let's move on to the next one, right? Beat Alive.
We're both in.
Okay, are you doing this? Am I doing it?
All right. BeatAlive.
Don't make me break the chainsaw back out, Ken.
Don't bring it back out. I'm afraid you're going to gas yourself out of your office. S3 buckets of blood.
It's a real chainsaw.
We'll carry there. Buckets of blood. Hope everybody recognizes this one. But BeatAlive is not. This wasn't something that a lot of people may have heard about or were even aware that who BeatAlive is. But it's a marketing software that allows email marketing campaigns, and they had a misconfigured AWS storage bucket, which exposed a gigabyte of data, according to the researchers.
More than that. I mean, maybe it was just a gig, but it was. I mean, I honestly I can't remember off the top of my head without looking.
Yeah, but it was left without. It had no password protection.
Thousands
no encryption.
Of files of data.
Yeah, no password protection, no encryption. Exposed records containing, email marketing leads, personal information, potential companies, potential customers, all kinds of stuff that should not have been exposed. And again, not a sophisticated attack.
And the big thing is that there were 3, I want to say, higher profile clients that were actually identified through this. Again, you can go out and look at reports. We're not going to drop names or anything like that on here, but it's all public information at this point. How did they accomplish this, though? Well, it was a misconfigured S3 bucket. Apparently, what actually happened was that there's security researchers out there that just go through and look for these open S3 buckets to see what's in them, right? Anybody else done something like that? No, of course not. We've never done anything like that. We don't just go out and look for stuff for fun, right? Of course not.
Yeah.
So what was the point of well, I mean, clearly a misconfigured S3 bucket. These things are important, right? Like these S3 buckets, if I remember we have done a challenge in the past. It was a OSINT challenge, open source intelligence challenge, where part of it was finding misconfigured S3 buckets and figuring out how to access the data in there. And it turned out, even if you're not familiar with AWS and S3, which is simple storage service, is I believe what that stands for. Even if you're not super familiar with it, the techniques to actually break into these buckets are trivial at best, especially if you know how to use certain tools and stuff like that. Or if you just go to the bucket itself and you can find that it's just wide open in a web browser, which is potentially possibly what happened here, right? So we don't know for sure. Now, I do want to say a fun fact about this real quick, right? Just the picture itself. I love this picture because that is the crypt of Louis Pasteur, the guy who invented milk. And of course, the crypt keeper is there with him, right? Now, Rhino Security Labs actually went out and built a tool. They used it internally at first, but have released the source code to it on GitHub for these open S3 buckets, that if you find an open S3 bucket, you can actually use it as a target of ransomware. Now, of course, I don't recommend doing this for any security researchers that are actually trying to break into anything, right? Or any pen testers, right? Without specific written permission, of course. But it looks like a pretty cool tool that can be used for ransomware. CloudGuard, I don't know if that's what it was called or not. Let me get back to you on that, because I just read about it a little bit ago, and here's the biggest problem with doing webcasts like this and having so many different pieces of information. I've got probably 20 or 30 tabs open here right now, specifically for this webcast, that I'm having to go back and forth over that I'm trying to remember where everything is at. So I will find that and get back to you here in just a minute. Oh, yeah, it's right here. It is called, no, it's not called CloudGoat. It's called S3 ransomware POC-.py. CloudGoat, I do believe, is probably a simulation, simulation like, WebGoat and stuff like that for the OWASP, that you could probably attack it from there. So for anybody looking up CloudGoat or not familiar with CloudGoat, go Google it real quick, research it, and it looks pretty interesting. It's something I actually have on my list of some stuff I want to play with eventually, right?
So let's talk about what the company did and what it cost them. So the researchers discovered this, they said, in 2021 on September 9th, and sent a responsible disclosure the same day. And 2 follow-ups over the next couple weeks, and didn't hear anything. So company didn't respond. That I don't know how they contacted them. I think an email. I don't know what the best way to get to a company like that is without them thinking it's some kind of fraud, or this is where with security researchers, where I have some issues with some of the things they do, but also like when they get pissy about the company not responding, with big companies, what is the proper way to go about, informing them without them thinking that it's, bullshit, basically. Like if it's a bug bounty, cool. Like they have channels for that, but some of these other things, it's hard to tell. Right. But they finally got back to them in February of 2022.
Right. Now, just so that the timeline is clear here, the initial access or bucket was discovered on September 9th, 2021, right? According to, I believe this is Website Planet, correct? That's the one. Website Planet. Yeah, Website Planet. That's right. According to Website Planet, we sent they state we sent a responsible disclosure of the data breach to Beetle and Atlantis Labs, Beetle's parent company, on the same day. We sent 2 follow-up messages to Beetle over the next 2 weeks. On September 15th, 2021, we sent a responsible disclosure of the breach to AWS, and on September 21st, we've sent a responsible disclosure to the US CERT, the Computer Emergency Response Team. Then they received the reply from the CEO on Valentine's Day 2022, where they said basically, hey, we take this platform security very seriously. As soon as the issue came to our attention, we immediately began an investigation and started fixing the problem. The affected bucket has been resolved now. We don't have any more issues. Please go away. That's basically what they put it in. Again, it's out there. It's all public knowledge, but I'm paraphrasing at that point. Hey, we fixed this. Please leave us alone.
Yeah, seems like what it comes
to. So what about the estimated financial losses? Anything like that? Was there any kind of data on that?
Not really. I'd seen that if the U.S. Federal Trade Commission jumped in, that they could be fined up to $100 million, but this was, a couple years ago, and I haven't seen anything happen yet. So
yeah, I haven't heard anything about it either. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
So where did they fall short?
Well,
it was an open S3 bucket.
Yeah.
I mean,
pretty obvious.
Do I really need to say more? Right? It was a misconfigured S3 bucket. How many misconfigured S3 buckets are out there? Well, I'll just say this. Whenever Website Planet did their research on this initially and found this one, apparently there was over 4,000 buckets out there. Now, granted, here's the thing. I don't know how many S3 buckets are actually out there in existence right now, but it's probably somewhere in the billions, trillions, right? So 4,000 is probably, it's going to be a low number, a low percentage, but if you've got really sensitive data out there, it doesn't matter if it's a low percentage. Whenever it comes to any kind of attacks, right? What is it that we always say? The defenders need to block all the holes, right? They need to make sure that everything is patched up. They need to make sure there's no misconfigurations. They need to make sure that there's no way possible to get to our target. As an attacker, we only need the one.
Just 100 hole.
Right. Now, also, I just also want to say, if that image on there of the log truck doesn't give you like the heebie-jeebies like it does me, clearly you're not as old as I am or never watched Final Destination 2.
I was going to say that.
Just the most terrifying scenes of any movie ever. like because it's just so stinking realistic.
I can't drive anywhere near a log truck.
They terrify me. I don't like them.
I'll get off at the next exit.
Yeah.
So open AWS S3 buckets are bad. Okay.
Slick wraps. What do we know about slick wraps? Well, apparently they weren't so slick.
Yeah.
Right. So 17 gig of data compromised, including a MySQL database, API credentials, customer data. Basically, from our understanding, this attacker, criminal, security researcher, criminal, they got in and they really wrecked the place, right? There was a lot of different vulnerabilities that were apparently chained together. The other big thing about this was the attacker who took it this far wasn't actually the first attacker to breach their systems, according to the the penetration test report that was documented out there, right? Next slide, Kathy.
This guy, too, there were accusations against Slick Wraps of them using bots for self-promotion and deceptive pricing and stuff. So I don't know if this guy was, disgruntled or, if that spurred all this. But
I think, it's like we talked about earlier with the MGM attack, right? This seems to be somewhat of a vigilante attack, which, again, don't do it, right? This is not if you're doing any kind of attacks like this without any kind of written permission from the owner of the data or the owner of the systems, you're a criminal. Period. End of story.
Go do
no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So this is definitely criminal activity that whoever the attacker is eventually posted the entire report online. Again, let me see if I can find that real quick, and I'll post that in the chat. Kathy, go ahead.
Yeah, that was interesting that they basically documented everything, wrote it up as if it was a report. And what did they get? They had so much data. There was customer photos, credentials to the entire MySQL database, API credentials for platforms like Zendesk, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and they were able to control the content management system and could have potentially deleted the company at that point. And who were they? That's, we talked about this guy was a, security researcher that may have been a little disgruntled. There was what?
We don't actually know who the cat is. We have no idea.
Yeah, no, we don't know. We know what he wrote, and then that's gone. Like there's archives of what he wrote up, but the original post has been deleted. It was on Medium.
Right, which is where if you want to see it, you have to go to archive.
Yeah.
What is it? Archive.ph to read up the original. Here it is right here. Again, I'm going to just post this. This is an archive of the Medium post. It kind of goes. It doesn't go necessarily through the entire technical results, but it does give a kind of overview of the narrative of it, right? So this is one of the really interesting things about this is the fact that there was the write-up of how the attacker actually pulled this off, including data of, not the actual data itself necessarily, I don't believe, but data about what they actually used. Again, it's like a narrative. In our narratives, in our reports, we try to give as much information about whatever we're doing, right? So the idea is that the team that we're participating in the red team attack with or the penetration test with can go back and validate, how we found what we found. Whether that be findings or no findings, we still want to tell them, hey, we used these tools, we found this particular, this misconfiguration or this file or whatever else, and we found this data. And then we use that to escalate privileges or whatever else. Okay. The thing is here, he really goes into the details of finding an upload.php script on a server, and then finding out that with that script, you could upload and overwrite other files. Okay. From there, he then uploaded a HT access file on an Apache server, which gave him access to read all the different files on the server through directory listings, etc. And then upload more files, which included a web shell. And of course, once you have the web shell, if there's any other attackers on here, you know as well as I do, once you have the web shell, it's pretty much almost pretty much game over. Right, you can pretty much access just about anything if there's other misconfigurations on the system that you're playing with, and then you can use that for pivoting into other systems or pivoting onto other networks, and that's just your initial access point.
I feel like in a way he justified what he did by the fact that he didn't do more. You know,
that's exactly. I really think that a lot of this was he was trying to justify what he did by saying, hey, I broke into this stuff, but I didn't do anything with your data. I didn't ransomware it, encrypt it. I didn't release it.
I just told everybody else how to get to it.
Right, exactly. You know, which is a major difference between this and the MGM attack at that point, right? Because both of them, again, I think were vigilante, at least according to the manifestos or the way that they presented themselves as the alleged attackers, right? If those are indeed legitimate, then they basically said, hey, there's a problem with this company. We're going to go attack this company and find out all of their secrets and expose everything. And then we're going to basically tell everybody about it. And hey, go have a nice day, right?
Right.
So a lot of these, I think, I don't believe that the Beetle Eye attack was a vigilante thing. I think that they probably tried to disclose responsibly about things, and Beetle Eye probably didn't respond well. I don't know. Like, I don't know the whole everything behind the thought processes behind the different organizations doing what they do. I do believe that with the Beetle Eye attack, the ethical viewpoint on whether or not that was a valid approach to doing it, it's really hard. Like, that's a debate that could go on for a while, because it was public data, but it belonged to somebody else, right? You're using these tools you're just scanning the internet, but again, it belongs to somebody else. So it goes back to the whole thing with like Shodan and these other tools that have been used over the years to scan public information and find misconfigurations and gain access to other people's data that probably shouldn't necessarily be there in the first place. Again, the debate goes on and on. I can tell you right now that if somebody asked me to do that, I would say, yeah, absolutely. Shoot me an email and we'll draft you up an SOW, and it costs you this much money.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, make sure, obviously as testers, we're going to make sure that we have the permission of the company, that's another question that was asked in class last week. How can you always make sure that you have the information, or that the person who's authorizing you to do the pen test is who they say they are, is an authorized user within the company to make these decisions, et cetera? And the answer is, we have processes in place to ensure that we do the best that we can, but there's no way to 100% to our knowledge, really, without meeting somebody in person, right? It's based on trust. Now, with that being said, it ain't happened yet because we do have the processes in place, and because
trust but verify.
Right. We trust but verify. Absolutely. Absolutely. So basically, did they exploit any known vulnerabilities or anything like that? Yeah, these were, maybe not well-known vulnerabilities as far as like in this particular scenario that this upload file had a known exploit or anything like that. But these types of vulnerabilities do exist in these systems. And that's one of the things that we check for in web application pen tests, and even in network pen tests. I'm working on external pen tests right now. And one of the things that I'm doing is looking at all the different web applications that may be available to see if there's any kind of upload functionality. And if I can find, the attacker actually writes in this pen test report that they went out and found another script that looked like it was pretty similar to the one that Slick Wraps had used on their servers, and had modified it, or had modified some custom code, custom exploit, if you will, to basically try to exploit this upload. And after some trial and error, actually found out that what they were trying to do was valid and would work. So, again, exploiting known vulnerabilities, no, but yes. It didn't seem like it was a known necessarily, as much as it was just, this was probably somebody didn't know about it and somebody took advantage of it. But the vulnerabilities do exist out there. So these are things that should be checked for as you're coding your scripts and as you're coding your PHP files or anything else that has to do with any kind of inputs, right? So what do we think is going to change on this, Kathy?
Does Slick Wraps even exist anymore? I think they do, but
that's a really good question.
Because I know we looked into this, but I was just like, God, how come we haven't heard of them? They still do, like, they make custom, covers for your phone and stuff. That sounds like a cool thing.
Yep, and right now they've got to get up to 40% code get up to 40% off with the code design, which is funny because I do remember in one of the reports that basically one of the reasons why they were attacked in the first place is because of quote unquote unethical sales practices, including like offering all these different codes all the time. So like they're jacking their prices up and then lower. Who doesn't do that?
Deceptive pricing type things using promotion.
And here's the thing: these are luxury items. Let's be perfectly honest. So whatever, if you're gonna charge for them, charge for them. If somebody doesn't want to buy them, that's on them.
Yeah.
No, and that's an entire different conversation that I don't want to get into anymore. I think I spoke too much on that, right?
Well, let's move on to the horrifying lack of urgency.
Yeah. Again, they were notified. Oh no, this was not BeetleEye. BeetleEye was the one where they were notified like months in advance. When do you think they knew, Kathy?
In January of 2020, this researcher contacted their customer support. And when did they get? I don't honestly, like, this company sounds so out of whack. I'm not sure that they ever knew. Like, I don't think they knew even after he told them.
Yeah. So it actually goes back to what my thoughts were basically, I really think that they didn't really know until the emails went out from their account, right? From their hello at Slick Wraps or whatever it was. They didn't probably actually know until those went out. Because again, if you look online, a lot of this information is just, it's out there. There's Twitter posts on it. There all sorts of information out there, right? And the one that comes up to me is basically there's a tweet on here, or an X or whatever it's called now. I don't even know. Don't get me started on that. But it's a screenshot of a Slick Wraps email that says the Slick Wraps logo has actually over the word wraps, it says hacked. And then it says, if you're reading this, it's too late. We have your data. Here's where you live with some information potentially that's blacked out. Redacted.
So they blocked him then.
Yeah, they blocked him.
Yeah.
Right. And then he basically gets in contact with him through a side channel. He's like, hey, listen, I'm in your stuff. We should chat.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of remediation efforts did they take? Anything?
Probably offered a 40% discount code to their customers.
Being that they got hacked, I'm sure it was probably more like 45 or 50% at this point.
Yeah,
right?
Maybe half off.
Do we know anything about the estimated financial losses or anything else?
Not that I could find. Like, most of the information that's out there is about the guy who hacked them.
Right.
Not about what happened with them after the fact. That's something that, might be interesting to look into to see if they were fined, if they had any lawsuits against them. Like, they're not, I guess they're not a huge company in the grand scheme of things, right?
No, I don't believe so. I think they're probably a boutique shop.
Mhm.
Probably, I mean,
Which
I haven't looked much
might
into.
explain, why nobody ever got back to them and just blocked them and just like tried to make the problem go away, But yeah, I don't think they're huge.
And I don't think the company at any point was really trying to say be my victim,
Right
to their clients, but it sure happened that way,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. And this, I like the picture of Candyman. Besides the bees, like just kind of gutting himself, kind of like I feel they did.
That's kind of what happened to them, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like they kind of let themselves. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, no. I mean, hey, it's a Halloween podcast. We already said there will be blood,
Right. And
for anybody who doesn't get the bee reference, please go watch Candyman. It's a fantastic, phenomenal movie, including the remake. We'll say it was.
It's not a remake of the original. It's a extension.
Yeah, it's a spiritual successor, we'll say. And
yeah,
it has some really interesting. It's a really cool movie. I highly recommend it.
I also really do. We actually went when that came out. All of us during shortly after still COVID times, and a bunch of us from Secure Ideas all pitched in and rented a theater out here in Jacksonville, and we all went to the theater and sat 5 feet apart.
That's cool. I watched it here on the TV at my house.
Did you?
Because I still wasn't going to a whole lot of movies at that point. So
yeah,
but
and it's cheap at the time too. Like you can rent the whole movie theater for a lot now, but then it ended up being like $15 per person or something.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we did that one time for one of the kids' birthdays or something like that, I think. So it was really neat. So anyway, let's get to the conclusions, right? Yeah. Because we're coming up on the hour, and quite frankly, we want to give you guys a little bit of time back if we can. What do we see here, right? Basically, the same old story, the same old song and dance.
Yeah.
Right? Underestimation of risk. We have these different companies that are not paying attention to what they should be paying attention to: policies, procedures, misconfigurations of S3 buckets, public data, stuff like that, right? Also, there's inadequate training. You've got specifically with the social engineering attack. Here's the thing. Some people will tell you that social engineering training is useless because people are going to get passed anyway. I don't believe that to be the case. I think that training is valid in any case, right? I think that it's wise to have the training because it at least exposes people to something they may not have had exposure to before. In this case, I really think that there should have been more. There should have probably been, if the information is correct about the way that MGM's policies were concerned, as far as only having to have the birth date, the name, and the employee ID of a user to reset a password or whatever else. That's no bueno, right? Like you're just waiting for an attack to happen at that point, which is exactly what happened. Go ahead, Kathy.
No, I agree with you on all that.
I thought you had something to say. You kept shaking your head. I thought you had something.
I'm agreeing with you. Yeah.
Clearly, we had some poor incident response, right? Especially with like the beetle eye, right? Like if you don't respond. Now, granted, I'll say this: I've been in a situation before where I've been a part of a breach. We had to notify some stuff, and it sucked, right? But we didn't really get any emails from the attacker or anything else. It was really more about, hey, they broke into some stuff, they encrypted our servers, and it was about a 24-hour ordeal. I literally stayed at the office and slept at my office for a while I waited for the backups to clear up and come back online and everything. It was an absolute nightmare. So I can't imagine, and it was for a very small organization, right? Mm-hmm. I can't imagine what it would be like in a large organization with so many more moving pieces, such as like MGM or something like that. Fortunately, it seems like with the Beetle Eye and S3 bucket, nothing else was compromised according to what the report said, and that comes from the company themselves. Which, let's be honest, if I were a member of that company, I would probably be trying to downplay whatever as well. So with that being said, taking everything at face value, I mean, it seems like the misconfigured S3 bucket was probably the only issue that they had. And if it contained any other data in it, like API keys or passwords or anything like that, which has been seen in other misconfigured S3 buckets, that could lead to a much larger compromise, right? Yeah. So again, and here's the thing, misconfigurations are often human error, right? Like so many of our attacks that we perform are from misconfiguration. Somebody asked me the other day, do we have exploits? Are we the primary the way that we get in? Is it through exploitation? Yes, but not in the sense that, there's some code that was written that went out and performed an exploit like, the MS 17010, the shadow brokers equation group, the one that caused WannaCry and not Petya. The other, that particular exploit was huge because it required a patch. Most of the time what we're doing is we're actually exploiting misconfigured items, devices, or software services that we can then take advantage of, right? So it may not require a patch, but it may just be that you're not following best practices, right?
Or bad passwords, or
exactly
not hacking in, you're logging in,
right? So that's it. Apparently, we don't have a thank you slide at the end of this, Kathy.
Did you not look at these slides before?
Yes, I looked at them, but I forgot we didn't have a thank you slide. I'm blaming you at this point because I didn't put it in there because I forgot. So
I thought we'd do a verbal thank you.
Huh?
I thought we'd do a verbal thank you.
Well, of course we do a verbal thank you, but I think we'll just here's what we'll do. We'll come back to this right here, and usually I think also we have the our names and addresses and stuff like that on there, but that's okay. Again, if you want to reach out to us for anything, you can reach out to us at aaron.moss@securedideas.com. Find me on the Twitters or the X or whatever the hell it's called now at hotdog, right? And you can find Kathy at kathy.collins.securedideas.com. And what is that, Kathy? Your Twitter?
Caffeine. That's my Twitter. Twitter X.
Yeah, of course it is. Caffeine.
Yeah, caffeine.
I can't spell, even with the glasses on.